Welcome to my channel, detailing events throughout the decades. 1972. Olympic Massacre. In 1972 at the Summer Olympics in Munich, West Germany, a Palestinian terrorist group known as Black September, took 11 Israeli Olympic team members hostage. The Summer Olympics was into its second week at the time of the hostage situation. Absence of armed guards had worried Israeli delegation head, Shmuel Lalkin, before his team even arrived in Munich. His team was housed in a relatively isolated part of the Olympic Village, in a small building close to a gate. Lalkin thought this made his team particularly vulnerable to an outside attack. Authorities assured him that extra security would be provided to help look after the Israeli team, but Lalkin highly doubted this. On Monday evening of September 4, the Israeli athletes enjoyed a night out, before returning back to the Olympic Village. At 4:30 in the morning of September 5, while the athletes slept, 8 members of the Black September Palestine Liberation Organization, carried duffel bags loaded with AKM assault rifles and grenades, scaled the 6.5-foot chain-linked fence. Once inside the village, the Black September members used stolen keys to enter 2 apartments used by the Israeli team. Yosef Gutfreund was awakened by a faint scratching noise at the door of apartment 1, where the Israeli coaches and officials were staying. He went to investigate and saw the door begin to open, and masked men with guns on the other side. He shouted to his sleeping roommates, and tried to stop the men from entering by throwing himself against the door. This gave time for Tuvia Sokolovsky to smash a window and escape. Moshe Weinberg, the wrestling coach, fought the intruders, who shot him and forced him to find more hostages. He led them past apartment 2, telling them that the residents were not Israelis. He led them to apartment 3, where the gunmen took 6 wrestlers and weightlifters hostage. Those in apartment 3 were marched back to the coach's apartment. Weinberg again tried to attack the gunmen, but was knocked to the ground. Yosef Romano attacked and wounded one of the gunmen before being shot and killed. The gunmen now had 9 hostages. All were bound up together. Several of the hostages were also beaten. Shaul Ladany in apartment 2 was woken by the screaming. He jumped from the second-story balcony of his room and fled to the American dormitory to wake U.S. track coach, Bill Bowerman. He informed him of the attack. Ladany was the first to spread the alert. On September 5, the Prime Minister of Israel appealed to other countries to help save our citizens and condemn the unspeakable criminal acts committed. U.S. President Richard Nixon discussed privately a number of possible American responses. The gunmen demanded the release of 234 Palestinians and non-Arabs, jailed in Israel, as well as 2 West German insurgents held by the West German penitentiary system. The gunman threw Weinberg's body out the front door to demonstrate their resolve. Israel's response was immediate: there would be no negotiation with the gunmen. This was their policy at the time. Israeli government believed that giving in to their demands would give an incentive to future attacks. Munich police chief Manfred Schreiber and Bruno Merck negotiated directly with the kidnappers, repeating the offer of unlimited money. Elsewhere in the Olympic Village, athletes carried on as normal, oblivious of the unfolding events. 12 hours after the first athlete had been murdered, United States runner Frank Shorter observed the events from his balcony. At 4:30 that evening, a squad of 38 West German police officers were dispatched to the Olympic Village, dressed in Olympic sweatshirts and carrying submachine guns. They were regular Munich police officers, with no experience in hostage rescue. They planned to crawl down from the ventilation shaft and kill the gunmen. However, camera crews filmed the actions of the police from the German apartment and broadcasted this live on television. The gunmen were able to see the police prepare for the attack. At one point, negotiators demanded direct contact with the hostages to make sure they were still alive. Walter Troger noticed several of the hostages showed signs of physical abuse, and David Berger had been shot in the shoulder. They believed that there were 4 or 5 gunmen only. At 6 p.m., the gunmen demanded transportation to Cairo. Two military helicopters were to transport the gunmen and hostages to nearby Fürstenfeldbruck, a NATO airbase. The authorities had an ulterior motive in mind. They planned an armed assault at the airport. The Palestinians and Israelis had to walk 200 meters through underground garages in order to reach the waiting helicopters. West German police decided to place sharpshooters there to ambush them, but Issa, the leader of the gunmen, insisted on checking the route first. While they were walking, police snipers laid behind cars in side streets, but when they got near, the snipers crawled away, making noise, and Issa was immediately alerted. Issa decided to use a bus instead. The bus arrived at 10 p.m. and drove them to the waiting helicopters. Issa checked out the helicopters before the gunmen and hostages boarded. 5 West German police were deployed around the airport as snipers. None of these police officers had any sniper training. A Boeing 727 was waiting on the tarmac with 16 West German police officers inside, dressed as flight crew. Issa was to inspect the plane first. During the transfer from the bus to the helicopters, the crisis team discovered there were 8 gunmen in total, not the 4 or 5 as they first thought. As the helicopters were arriving at the airport, German police aboard the plane voted to abandon the mission, without consulting Central Command. Only 5 sharpshooters remained. Helicopters landed just after 10:30 that evening. The Black September members held the pilots at gunpoint. They had promised earlier that they would not take any Germans hostage. They inspected the plane and realized it was a trap. They quickly ran back to the helicopters. As they ran past the control tower, Sniper 3 took an opportunity to eliminate Issa. However, he missed his target. West German authorities gave the order for the snipers to open fire. It was now 11 p.m. Chaos erupted. 2 kidnappers holding the helicopter pilots hostage were killed, while the remaining gunmen scambled to safety, returning fire from behind and beneath the helicopters. They shot out many of the airport lights, reducing visibility. During the gun battle, the hostages secretly worked on loosening their bonds and teeth marks were found on some of the ropes. West Germans had not arranged for armored personnel carriers ahead of time. These got delayed in traffic, and only arrived around midnight. The kidnappers now began to panic, thinking their operation could become a failure. On September 6, the gunmen turned on the hostages in the helicopters and fired at them. Springer, Hafen, and Friedman were killed instantly, while Berger was shot twice in the leg and managed to survive a short while. His autopsy showed that he had died of smoke inhalation. The gunman then pulled a pin to a hand grenade and threw it into the cockpit, destroying the helicopter and those inside. Issa ran across the tarmac firing at police. Police killed him with their return fire. What happened to the rest of the hostages is still unclear. Initial news reports around the world indicated that the hostages were all alive, and all the gunmen had been killed. Finally, correct reports were made. All 11 hostages had been killed. Heavy criticism was made after the attack on German authorities and their lack of preparation for such an event. The bodies of the 5 Palestinian attackers killed during the battle were delivered back to Libya, where they received a hero's funeral. On September 8, Israeli planes bombed 10 PLO bases in Syria and Lebanon, in response to the massacre, killing several militants and civilians. 3 surviving gunmen were arrested and held in a Munich jail for trial. Lufthansa Flight 615 was hijacked and threatened to be blown up if these 3 gunmen were not released. They were immediately released by West Germany. In the wake of the hostage situation, the Olympic Games was eventually suspended, after public criticism of the Olympic Committee's decision to continue with the Games. A memorial service was held and attended by 80,000 spectators and 3,000 athletes in the Olympic Stadium in memory of those who had died in the tragedy. Forever remembering those who died in Munich that year, may you never be forgotten. Thank you for watching and learning about events throughout history. Please subscribe to my channel to see other events throughout the decades.